You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Couldn't be more honored and excited to have Thibault from Rental Scale Up on the show today. Thibault, welcome to Slick Talk. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm great. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone.
Of course. Well, where are you located? Just to give everyone an understanding of where you're based at today.
So today I am in the Netherlands. So during the first lockdown, like years ago now, we moved out of Amsterdam, and now we live a half hour north of Amsterdam in like old farm by the beach. It's not too bad, but you may also find me part of the year in the Caribbean because that's where my home is part of the year. But right now, Netherlands
And then Caribbean. Not too bad of a life, my friend. Not too bad. I like it. I love just jumping into the story with our guests on the show. And for me, I'm really curious, where did you even get started in getting into the industry? It sounds like you, from our pre-chat and conversation, you have properties yourself that you run. So let's jump right in. Where did this all begin for you?
Well, actually it began 20 years ago, in the sense that we started, my ex and I, wanted to have our own place in Paris because that's where we were living at the time. And just like a lot of young people, we just couldn't afford it. We just could not afford our own apartment in Paris. And we went on vacation in Saint Martin, which is an island in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And then we saw in Saint Martin, there was like a ferry going to this other island called Saint Barts. So Saint Barthélemy for the French speakers. We were like, let's just go there for a day. And we went there, arrived with the ferry into the port called Gustavia, and we were amazed. It's a tiny island, so it's like 25 square kilometers, which is barely, I guess, 30 square miles. So it's very tiny. You just go around the island for in like just an hour when you drive, but it's so beautiful. And we came back the next year, following year, spent there a week, and we're like, what if we could, what if we were buying a house there? We're like, oh, come on, let's be crazy. Let's do some villa shopping. Let's just pretend we're interested, talk to, a real estate agent, and just make believe, right? Why not? That's fun thing to do. And lo and behold, actually, what we discovered is that we could buy one of those houses. Why? Because the real estate agent was like, these houses here, they're not houses. They are businesses. They are vacation rentals. Like already this house, which is built. So the house we were visiting was like not fancy at all, right? It was like not fancy at all. And they were like, but you know what? They already got bookings for next year. The whole of next year is already booked because people book from 1 year to another on the island. And if you go to local bank will see this as a business and will look at the upcoming bookings for next year. They know the bookings will be happening and it will lend you money. They were like, really? And yes, it did happen. So that's how in our 20s, we suddenly had a fancy villa in the Caribbean while we still didn't have our own apartment in Paris. So that's how we got started. It was just luck and a very clever real estate agent, which now, of course, makes sense nowadays, right? With whole, people building Airbnb empires, like it's just like buy a house and rent it out, and that's how we got into it. Just pure chance.
Pure chance. I love it. Well, that's a very smart real estate agent, and I'm pretty sure you don't regret that because it looks like from when you were in your 20s to buying that to where you are today, vacation rentals, short-term rentals, whatever people want to call it. That's become quite a big passion of yours. So did you eventually go into more properties? Can give me, what was the next step? Were you the operator yourself? What happened after the purchase of the home?
Yeah, it's probably a story that quite a few of your listeners will relate to, in a sense that you get started into this bit by chance, and then you start thinking, hey, how can I increase my revenues? The first thing we're like, well, just like, let's just fix this house. So over 10 years, first we just expanding the house as much as we could, because we realized that our target market were really couples, like either big family or couples were coming together for a special occasion on the island. And these four couples coming together, they wanted to have sort of equivalent bedrooms. And the way the house was at the time was like somebody would, we knew that one of the couples would be like, yeah, look at the bedroom we had, and we're paying the same as the other ones.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's just fix the houses, make sure everybody has an ensuite bathrooms, kind of things. And then once we did this, we're like, okay, it's working pretty well. Why don't we, we still have some room in a piece of land we had. Let's just build this one bedroom house just for us, so that when we are on the island, when we live there, actually, we can still rent out the big one. That's what we did. We built a house for ourselves. And then we had friends who were building a house in Bali, a vacation rental as well. And I was like, Bali, really? At first, I was not even sure what Bali was, that it was in Indonesia. And number two, I was not super attracted. I love Thailand, but Indonesia or Bali, for some reason, to me, was like super touristy and just like, just like over.
Yeah.
Right? And they invite us to see the house when it was built. We're like, just let's not be stupid, right? Somebody's inviting you somewhere, just go there.
Yeah.
And so I remember we arrived at the airport. You arrive at the airport, you exit the airport, there's like Burger King, McDonald's, or KFC. You're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I thought. And then boom, with a jet lag, I just fall asleep. I wake up an hour and a half later, we're in the middle of the rice paddies. Their house is, by a black sand beach, among the rolling paddies. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually beautiful. They lived on a village far from the craziness of South Bali. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And we thought, you know what? It's not a bad place. And our friends did it. We surely can do the same. Let's just use the same architect, same notary, some person. And of course, that's why we did it first. And it all fell apart because it went wrong with the architect. The notary was wrong. And we had to negotiate for a year to secure the land because it's crazy out there. Anyway, it took us 3 years, but then we built a house there. And meanwhile, I acquired a second one in the south of Bali, just because we had to go to Bali to see the other one building. So at some point, like, let's just get another rental to to live there. So that's how at some point we had 4 properties, 2 in the Caribbean and 2 in Bali. But we sold one of the smaller one in Bali. So we have 3 now.
Oh, that's awesome. So total of 3, you're an owner manager. When did rental scale up become a thing? When did that idea, when did that spark? Because I've been watching your guys' content for, I would say, the last years, when I really like started discovering a lot more people on LinkedIn. That's how you and I got connected. And no, I just love the content that you guys are putting together. It's more data analytical than a lot of other content media producing type businesses, like especially like mine. Ours is all audio. And I'm just kind of curious, when did that idea spark and get created and flourish to where it's at today?
Yeah, good question. Rental scale up is really, like, as you said, is like about talking about what the big players are doing in the industry: Airbnb, Booking.com, VRBO, talking about market trends in the US, in Europe, and talking about the new players in the industry. So it's true, it's easier when talking about trends, it's easier to show a graph than to describe a graph audio. So I guess we all have a media of choice for that. So it actually started 6 years ago. It was called Rentalpreneurs at the time. And it started out because this house I had in Bali, this beautiful house we built, was also on a black sand beach, also among the rolling paddies. Not one property manager in Bali, not one property manager wanted to take it on. They were like, they're all based in South Valley, and they're like, it's just too far for employees to drive there. If one of the guests is there and needs some service, it's just too far. And we're like, oh my goodness, what did you just do? Just build this beautiful house, and now I have to find clients. So
Yeah.
the whole hashtag direct booking thing.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was not so much direct booking as in like, okay, I can't have property management company help me. How do I just get bookings, right? Just direct, not direct, whatever you want. I need the bookings.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay. So I started discovering the world of the home aways, which is a big thing. It was the former name of VRBO. Airbnb was there launching, even though I'm like, Airbnb for luxury villa, never going to work. Of course it did.
Yeah.
And TripAdvisor was there. So I'm like, well, that's working. And at some point I'm like, why don't I just start blogging about what I'm doing, how I'm doing this, and maybe other people who want to do the same. And I started writing a book in French about how to make money on Airbnb. So sort of a classic way for a lot of people in a way.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also do some consulting for property managers to help them, because I had a background in online marketing already for the travel industry. And I said, well, why don't I go and speak at a big conference? It was like the VRBO Europe, to find clients, because people in the room may be interested in my services. So I just I went there. I mean, I just put out my name. I was speaking about a topic which I didn't know much about at the time, but I got selected. So I'm like, okay, I got 5 months to actually become an expert, practice, do my own case studies, interview people, and come back and deliver value, which sort of I did, I think.
Yeah.
But it was like, let's just do it. And but in the room, actually, there was somebody from Booking.com sitting there. Somebody from Booking.com. And they're like, why don't you come over and work for us at the headquarters? And I'm like, And the headquarters being in Amsterdam, which I didn't know. And they're like, well, you know what? Because Booking.com, we are very good at hotels, but we at insert beep, we are at short-term rentals, vacation rentals, right? Our tools are really for hotels. Pricing tools, our tools are just too complicated. The way we talk to properties, we ask maybe people list a place whether they have a restaurant, doesn't make sense for a short-term rental. So why not you come over and do that? And I'm like, how can I say no? They want to compete with Airbnb. That's a pretty nice thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up working at Booking.com for 5 years in tech. So really trying to take a product and adapting this to the short-term rental industry. So meanwhile, I was still blogging, because that was my agreement with them. I want to do that, but I want to keep my freedom. I can blog about stuff. So that's how basically Rentals Club was born in a way. Now I don't work at Booking.com anymore, but was the idea of saying, let's talk about the trends. Let's talk about what the big actors are doing. And again, this way I can really pull the fact that I'm an owner, the fact that I know quite a few property managers. I know the tech. And so I understand from the inside how the big platform think. And sometimes some of their decisions you think are crazy. And I'm like, yes, it's crazy, but I know why. They can't do otherwise. So it was very interesting. That's what you see on Rental Scale Up, basically, all this experience coming together.
No, I love that. And what was your biggest takeaway from that experience? Like what was the secret sauce that you're like, I'm going to pull one thing from here, one thing from there to create, because you're doing Rental Scale Up full time on top of your property. So it's obviously like I think for a lot of people in our space to get successful in this media side, whether it's blogging, podcasting, creating what you've created, it's not very common. Like it's very a lot of people, it's a side gig. It's very much a side hustle. So for you, what was the secret sauce on the takeaways that you've had from those experiences that really made Rental Scale Up, become what it is today?
Well, first, thanks for the good words on Rental Scale Up. I always feel like, I was this imposter syndrome, which I think we should always have, because that's what pushes us to strive for and be more, to improve. But anywho, this being said, I think it's I think I really like explaining stuff. I like discovering new things. I like saying, oh, look at that. Airbnb says that. Is that true? Let's look at their financial data.
Yeah.
Is this really what they want to? Oh, that's what they're saying. That's what it really means. And that's what we should be doing as property owners and managers. So I like uncovering things, like, what are the big brands saying, or if I see a new feature on VRBO, I'm like, oh, they have a new feature in beta. What does that mean? It's it's Google around, and lo and behold, usually there's like, a former developer of the company that's on their blog who's talking about what they've been doing. I'm like, that's good. So I like uncovering things, and I like then taking that and trying to make sense of it for property owner, property manager. Okay, that's what's happening. I think that's what it means, and that's what you should be doing. So I really like these kind of things, and in a way, I think I'm really good at this. It's because then it also powers the other side of the business, right? Because we also do two things. We also do consulting
Okay.
for tech companies in the industry who want to, like, channel managers, PMSs,
Yeah.
or noise monitoring devices, who want to maybe develop new features for their products. But for that, they need to have insights on the market, need to make sense of their own data, and they need to have good go-to-market plans, which I did for 5 years, basically, at the headquarters at Booking.com. So I think I know a few things about that. But again, I really work with their teams to do this. And the second thing, again, this data is not just, or the content is not just from me, right? I spend, just like you, Will, I interview a lot of people, because I'm like, yeah, I don't have, I'm not the
Yeah.
voice of the industry, right? I know a few things, but there's always people who know more. There's all the other opinions, and
Yeah.
it's good to have diverging opinions. That's what you want, to make your own opinion,
Yeah.
listen to different things, and that's why we've really launched now a network. And this, the idea of the network we have on Rental Scale Up, it's a network of professionals, basically, and we welcome, property owners, managers, vendors, listing site operators, like everyone. And the idea is that the media we have is powered by the network, meaning that we get, for example, we discuss trends, like trends in the US. And I have great data, and I share the data I have, but then also I get opinions from people on the ground, West Coast, East Coast, Hawaii. Okay, and then they tell me what it is. And then when we write the final article on the website, it's even more interesting, because there's not only the data, not only what I think of the data, but actual, let's say, things that happen on the ground as told by actual property managers in the US. So
Yeah.
that's why we like this, having like a network powered media, is just trying to get everybody's opinions, and just like be more interesting. That's really, I love connecting people. That's what I love doing,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I was gonna say, it makes it unbiased too. It's not just your opinion. It's not just your interpretation of data and you know, uh, markets and understanding of what's going on. It's really, you're getting a sense of what's generally happening, and you're just reporting it in a different fashion, right? You're not being unbiased and saying, oh, Airbnb's blah blah blah, or this and this. Like, you get the opportunity to balance it out.
Yeah, it's true. So I usually say that's what the data says, or that's why I see data, and then I say, and I think that, or we think that, so people can kind of see where we're going to, like, our own opinion. So I want to make sure people understand that, where I'm coming from. And that's also what makes it hard sometimes, because I get like press releases from vendors
Yeah.
every week, probably same with you. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, sometimes I'm like, so what? I mean, why should a read of mine care about this? And not to be arrogant. I'm like, because again, I've done product marketing for a few years now. I'm like, the way press releases are written, sometimes you're like,
Mhm.
okay, good for you. You have a new product. Good for you. Now, what's in for the user? Why should I care? Why? And even for me, then what can I write about this? And
Mhm.
it is important to not only have an opinion about something, but even go back to some people and say, okay, you send me something new.
Yeah.
Can I just talk with you, because I need to uncover a bit, or try to understand whether there's an angle here or not, whether it's newsworthy or not, in a way, because it's easy to just like take a press release and publish it. It's a bit harder to actually curate news and say, this I think is valuable or not, and spend time doing this. So it is tricky. You need to have your opinion, but also make a choice on what you want to talk about, which is another level.
For sure. Yeah, you and I do the same thing when it comes to a press release. It's like, okay, what made you come up with this new product or this new service or whatever? Because I think a lot of the time when they're reading it, they're talking about this, and it's like there's no backstory value, where it's like, were your customers demanding this? Were your potential customers that didn't sign up with for you want this, and this is what has lost you guys X amount of dollars in revenue, so you created it to get that revenue back? What's the story? Yeah, I like that perspective. I think you're onto something, because it's really about curating general value content. It's not just an opinion article or just a press release. It's something that's going to bring value to operators like yourself, to companies, and the B2B side, and the B2B or B2C side. Gosh. So it's very well curated and well thought out. So what came up with uh from you, like, so you said you had a marketing background. What made you get into the network? What made you launch this what do you call it, scalers network, for what you guys are doing at Rental Scale Up?
Um, well, I think probably a bit like you, right? Back in the old days when there were still in person conferences,
Yeah.
I would just love going there, right? Meeting people, meeting new people. I would go to every booth and try to discover new technologies. A lot of time, I'm lucky enough to be invited as a speaker,
Yep.
and talking at conferences. So I just love that. And what I love is that, then people reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask, do you know somebody who, or do you know what kind of tech does that? Or for example, people in the Caribbean, because I spend a lot of time in the Caribbean, say, hey, I'm also in the Caribbean on different island. I want to expand and invest in, I think that in Bali. Actually, I got the question yesterday. Somebody like, can you write about this, or can you do it? And I'm like, there's only so much time I have, in a way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, again, sometimes I'm not the best placed person to talk about some topics.
Yeah.
Right? Some topics that just, I can talk about stuff, but if you're on real value, I prefer saying that's the person you should be talking to. They know way better topic better than I do. And I'm like, why don't I just make it happen, so that it's not just me connecting? I just try to get with the network, get all these people together, and the idea is not to create a Facebook stuff, right? It's not about
Right.
this. It's about, let's say, making sure people meet. So we are like, every month is like, like speed dating, if you will, before. But like, we really try to match people who have interests together. We also have like mastermind like groups where people get together in small groups and really work on their own goals and get things done. Because that's so what we've noticed is that a lot of people like what we publish, like the trends we talk about, and we still try make them actionable in the trends and the articles. That's what you should be doing. But some people need maybe a little push to say, okay, and now I need, for example, to look at different markets and select a property, and maybe having like, every 2 weeks, a group of people, a group of peers who just push you a bit more or give you some structure, or, with whom you can share your failures or success, is very important. So we try with this network to have some really scheduled activities every month to help people get results, like by finding a new business partner, getting things done in a group. And also we have like private calls where, again, we discuss trends, for example, as I said. So this way it also makes my content richer. So that was the idea of the network, is, again, it was to power the media with more relevant insights, and also go further by saying, okay, not only do we tell you what the trends are, we kind of help you make things happen for your business faster by helping you meet peers who also want to get things done.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good community aspect, and I think missing conferences and in-person events, something like that is a lot more valuable than nothing at all, or the endless amount of Zoom calls that we go through every day.
Yeah, and if you're in the US, there's a wealth of conferences.
Yeah.
If in Europe, fewer. But if you're in Bali, or if you are even in Australia, or different markets in the world, big markets, right?
Yeah.
Or if you are in Greece, for example, Greece is a huge market. Croatia is a huge market. People don't know that for vacation rentals. There's not a big conference. So who can you talk to? Who can you relate to? Where can you get information? So that's where having an online network is important. But of course, what we do as well, we have like quarterly meetups. So hopefully you can have one in the first quarter, Q1 2022. But that's also what we try to do. Also try to meet in person, for example, on the back of the big conferences.
For sure.
Because we're going to be there anyway, so just meet up.
Yeah, I love that. What has been the hardest part of this journey for you? Would it be leaving booking.com? Would it be building what you've built? What's been the hardest part for this whole journey on the back end that most people don't see?
Mm. I would venture that, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people listening are entrepreneurs one way or another, right? It's either full-time, either vacation rentals or hospitality is a full-time job, or a side gig, but kind of important in their life in terms of time, revenues, or future perspectives, right? Um, so as a would-be entrepreneur, let's say myself, um, working at booking.com was tough.
Mm,
Again, I got great friends there. I met great people. And again, I was coming from my island in the Caribbean, and I got that job at the headquarters of a global leader in the industry, number one hospitality website in the world. Look at that.
yeah.
So it was fantastic, right? But like, I swear I wrote down like my 90-day goals, and my 90-day goals were like, number one, don't get fired. Because I had never worked for a big company before.
Yeah.
Never. I always had my own companies or worked for small companies, but not for big. And I'm like, oh my God, never going to survive. And so I did, because I loved the topic and it was great. They kind of had created a smaller company within a company, like the vacation rental people. So we were these weirdos who didn't care about the hotels, unlike the rest of the company. So it created like some kind of identity where we were like the underdogs in a thing. And when we stepped out going to conferences, we could see that people were saying, okay, booking.com, you went from blah to slightly better, especially if in Europe.
Yeah.
Still not perfect, far from that, but that's the way it is. So that was great, but to me that was still tough, because I was like, yeah, is my future here? And do I really want to work for a big company? I have impact, but it's like it's lost. How that was tough for me, was to, let's say, reconcile my my wanting to be independent
Mm,
entrepreneur and working in a big group. And this held for a time, because we had a special identity. At some point, it was gone, because in a way, it grew so big in a company that it was just absorbed by the rest of the company. And then, yes, it was not so special anymore. And then you have more the weight of the hierarchy, and just like the fact you can't get new ideas really. You can't make them happen because just too big. And that was tough for me, is to see this a bit sort of like identity die off. And then it was not too hard to leave then, but that's just the way it is.
yeah.
It's a cycle. It's normal cycle.
Normal cycle. No, I feel I left a couple of hotels when I was the first, hotel front desk or a manager or whatever. It's just like it gets to that point where it gets too big in the sense of like the creativity, the opportunity for implementing A/B testing or whatever. It's just, yeah, you lose that.
Or maybe you're not the right person anymore for this, right? So it's just like a sad love story.
Sad love story. I love it. For rental scale up, what's next for you guys? What's going to be the big push for 2022 as we're getting ready to? I think this is going to be a big year for a lot of companies like yours and many others in the space. But I'm always curious to know what's the big picture for the next year that's going to come.
Yeah, what's been very interesting basically I went full time with Rental Scale Up last April.
Okay.
And what's been interesting for me, end of the year 2021, was building systems.
Mm.
In a way, again, if you're a property manager, you know what I mean here, right? Like, if you don't have systems to solve the operational issues, you lost, right? Or even if you have a podcast, if you don't have systems, there's so much things. If you want to be consistent, if you want to save time, you need to automate a few things, have processes, use project management tools and automation, all these kind of things. So what I hope to do now in 2022 is have the benefits of this, because it's been tough, trying to find out what people cared about and then try to make it like a system, a process. So for example, now starting in January, we have the first monthly conferences, and these monthly conferences, like every month, we have like an expert, an hour conference about a theme that the industry cares about. And now it's, thanks to processes we have, we're way better at getting things organized, making sure everybody has that great content to talk about on par with our brand. So that's great. So to me, it's really the year where we finally take off, in the sense that we are way more organized, more professional, thanks to systems. Again, I think a property manager could relate to that growth with just more systems. Yeah. And I think the second thing to me is really making sure the network is taking off as well. Mm-hmm. It's launched, it's up and running, but now we need also to make sure that all the events happen. They will be happening on time, but they produce, let's say, enough results so that I can say, yes, the network really changed the life of people who are part of this. And that's really my goal. I want to help more people through the network and have them have more results.
I love it. So where can people find you? Every episode, I ask the guests, what's the number one place you want to send everybody? If they had one click to hit, where would you send them?
rentalscaleup.com. It's the easiest. That's where it is. And you can find the content. We have a free newsletter that's sent out every Wednesday about the industry. There's my profile with a link to LinkedIn. So just go there and you'll find all the links you need to contact me. And I'm always happy to hop on a 15-minute call, and just talk about the industry or any issue people have.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first, Slick Talkers. Go ahead, check out the show notes, and go ahead, like and subscribe to everything Thibault and Rental Scale Up. Thank you so much, my friend, for being on the podcast, and we'll see everybody again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.